Hello, everyone, and welcome to Edge Talk Radio. My name is Angela Zabel, that's me, and today I'm here with Cassandra Schamber, and we're going to be talking about mind, body, spirit connection and medicine, holistic medicine, Western medicine. We're going to see what is the deal between all of that. So I can't wait to get started on that. And then who am I? I am Angela Zabel. I am a teacher, coach, and medium who has been connected with spirit my entire life, sharing messages from the non-physical. And I also work with a team in the non-physical. So you may be hearing from them throughout this interview. I am a radio show host, writer, retreat host, teacher, coach, medium, gallery reader, doing speaking engagements, offering guidance, mediumship, intuition, coaching, and more with online and private sessions. And I also offer the Amplified Universe membership. This is a membership. This is about growing our connection to us, our world, and all that is around us, and our role in it. You can find out more about me at angelazabel.com, and I'm pretty much on all the social media aspects, so check me out there. And today we are here with Edge Magazine. Edge Magazine is the leading events and media resource dedicated to all aspects of holistic living, health, and wellness, and the mysteries beyond. And for those of you looking, here's a copy of one of the newer magazines. It's all about sharing information, wisdom, and resources, committed to promoting businesses, organizations, and individuals who support our collective journey to wholeness, wellness, and balance. It's currently distributed in 30 states plus Canada, with over 17,000 printed magazines per printing, and it has a vibrant online community. So make sure to check out the online magazine with over 42,000 people reached per month. And you can have a magazine shipped directly to your door, become a drop spot, and sign up for the newsletter to stay up to date. And you can find out more about them at edgemagazine.net. And today we are here with Cassandra Schamber. And Cassandra, she is a family physician and pain specialist turned health and life coach. She focuses on helping people get to the root of the issues that are limiting their healing. Through the work she's done with patients in her own life, she's created an online course with the paperback books called The New Healing Connection. It's a self-guided course to help people go within and heal the root causes that are limiting them. She especially focuses on emotions and the interplay between thoughts, emotions, and intuition. By feeling all of your emotions, including the uncomfortable ones like anger, sadness, and fear, and recognizing and transforming unhealthy thought patterns, like messages telling you that you don't have the knowledge or the power to heal yourself. You will more easily access your intuition, that part of you that is the best expert, always telling you and knowing what's best for you and what's best for you in every situation. This is a process and in of itself healing, and she will guide you with questions about what to do next. She's creating a beautiful platform for all of you, and I know so many of you are busy out there. So this self-guided, self-taught aspect is going to be so important. And Cassandra, you can find out more about her at drcassandra.com. And it's the newhealingconnection.com, and also on LinkedIn and Facebook. And she is an MD focusing on the mind, body, spirit connection. She combines her understanding of Western medicine, complementary medicine, and spirituality as she helps people get to the root of their pain and heal from within. So definitely check out her New Healing Connection. Go on her website. I've been checking into it, and it is really good. And it's really a good place to look at moving through a lot of emotions, moving through what's causing your initial aspects. So definitely check that out. And with that, Cassandra, thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to have you here. And how did you move from the more Western medicine into more the holistic?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today. You've done such a nice introduction. I don't know if there's anything else I need to say,
Oh,
but
we'll
we'll
find
see.
plenty.
So what made me sort of go on the path that I went on? Well, if I look back in my life, when I was young, I had this really nice integration between the masculine and feminine parts of my life. And, people talk about the divine masculine and the divine feminine, sort of, that part, the divine masculine being the more intellectual, action oriented, whereas the divine feminine being more of the intuitive, nurturing type of ourselves. And when I was young, I was lucky because when I knew I wanted to be a doctor, since I was, almost the first conscious thought was I want to be a doctor.
Wow.
And I was, honestly, I probably was just incredibly annoying, incredibly competitive. If I could look back and say, little Cassandra, there's one thing I could tell you, just relax a little bit. But anyway, so I would go to school and I was, I've got to get to med school, even in elementary school. That's how
Wow.
intense it was. And I would go out in the world. I would do that kind of active intellectual work. But I was really lucky because then I would come home and it was like I turned that off and I lived this really feminine world where I was really close with my mom, my grandmothers.
Mm.
I always had a lot of female friends. Not that men aren't able to access that feminine, but especially when I was growing up, it was more of the old fashioned way where women were women and did women things and men were men and did men things. And I love the girly stuff. So it was really fun for me to be a girl. And I just took it for granted that, this is how life is, that we have to spend our time doing the more intellectual active aspects of life, but then we also get to integrate this intuitive part of it. But then I got to medical school and it was a real shock. It was just like throwing me in the deep end. I might as well have joined the military. I think that's the Western medicine, allopathic medicine model is really one of this sort of military approach where we're really intellectual. We are uncomfortable with emotions. We don't want to even talk about intuition. What is that? And so, oh man, from the first day of med school, it was just a shock for me because I just assumed life was going to just be, a continuation of what I'd been experiencing. And part of it was just that I had to spend so much time. When you're in medical training, it's like being in the military because you are spending your whole day doing this work. And so that time for myself on a personal level during my medical school and then my family medicine residency really beat me up. And I'm also a very petite, small, wimpy person. And I need to sleep a lot. I need to rest a lot. I have to eat and go to the bathroom more than once a day. And it was just so much imbalance for me. And I'm also a very sensitive person emotionally. And so I need time to process things. And I didn't have that time. And it just built and it built and it built. And so on a personal level, by the time I got out of residency, I knew something had to change because I was just really miserable physically, emotionally. I knew I was out of balance. I didn't know exactly what I needed to do about it, but I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to continue. And then as far as my patients were concerned, I had grown up in the 70s with the doctor show at the time was Marcus Welby, MD.
Oh,
And
yes.
do you remember that show?
Yes.
And I don't remember a lot because I was so young, but it felt like, the patients would come in and Dr. Welby always had a really good answer for any problem. And, by the end of the episode, everyone felt better. And I thought, wow, I want to do that. I want to be part of something like that. But then as I got through my family medicine residency, I realized, wow, I'm not fixing people in an episode here. These people, I can treat their hypertension with a new blood pressure medicine. And a couple months later, they come back and it didn't work. And their blood pressure is even higher than before. Wait, what's that about? Or someone has chest pain and we do a big workup and we still don't know why they have the pain. I was like, I had not expected that at all. I guess that was part of my naivete. But I got out of residency. I was like, wait, there's got to be more here. And I'm not criticizing Western medicine because it is a complex thing and there's so much to know. And it's really good that we have the healthcare providers that are doing the work on that level. But it became really clear to me really quickly that that is not even the beginning of the answer for how we can heal. So that's really what got me going. By the time I got out of residency, I was just personally and professionally, here I had expected that, boy, I'm going to get out of residency. I'm going to start working in a hospital or a clinic. Because back then you did it all. You, as in family medicine, you were in the clinic, you did call in the hospital, you delivered the babies. And I would have loved to have that lifestyle, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. So I had to start looking outside then and thinking, well, how am I going to do something different? And that's really what brought me onto this path where I started investigating the different types of, and back then, now we're talking 25 years ago, that there wasn't a
Yes.
lot, at least in Minnesota. Maybe if I lived in California or New York or something, but in Minnesota, we didn't have the internet yet. And we were pretty much, you go to the bookstore and or the library and you see what you can read. And so that's how I got started, is by studying the things I could find and just slowly figuring things out that way, one step at a time.
I love the fact that, you said it didn't feel right. And this was way before, like you said, way before the internet, you know, everything is at your fingertips now. It surely was not then. You really had to search for it.
Yeah. Did you
And
have that experience too? I mean, have you been on this path for a little while too?
I've been on the path for a while, but I just I checked out different books. I was reading different things, but I was this I didn't think it pertained to me type of thing.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Not that I wasn't ready to accept that I was communicating all the time. I'm looking at through the books and going, oh, they're communicating, they're doing this, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I hope one day I could do that too. And I'm like, I didn't accept the fact that I was already doing it. That was the
Oh,
acceptance. It was me accepting the fact that I was doing it already.
wow. See, now I got a book. So it started like I'm trying. Well, first I tried, because we always start with the physical. I think it's just a habit. I started with what kinds of supplements are there? Well, back then we had a
Mm.
multivitamin, magnesium, melatonin, and maybe St. John's wort.
Yeah,
That was it.
it wasn't
And,
much.
and then, there were some different, I tried hypnosis and then Deepak Chopra. Thank goodness for Oprah, because I found Gary Zukav and Carolyn Mace.
Oh,
And so I started working with energy, but like I got a book on how to read auras. And back then, I was so in my head, so intellectual that my intuition, I had really sort of cut that off. And I wish I could have looked at that book. I was like, okay, this is it. I want to see that aura. But it wasn't meant to be for me at that point. So yeah, so I started doing all of these investigations of different things. And I realized as I'd be working with patients, I was like, wow, this stuff is really applicable.
mm.
And then, about a decade after I finished the family medicine residency, I went back and I did a pain fellowship, because at that time, pain medicine was really the premier integrative area of medicine. And now it's totally opposite. That is all gone now. As far as what I see in the clinics and hospitals, now it's just interventional. But back
Mm.
then, and maybe it was Minnesota, but I think they were pretty cutting edge in Minnesota, but we were really trying to figure out this whole holistic approach to healing. And like when I went to my fellowship, this is at the University of Minnesota. The head of the department teaches everyone acupuncture, and that was pretty unusual back then. So I learned acupuncture, and I worked with these really progressive physical therapists and psychologists and people who were really trying to think outside the box. And so that was really a good base for me, where I started feeling, this might be something where I can practice medicine and still I can work and start being integrative with all of this. And so I went back to the local hospital, and I worked at their pain clinic, and it was a good pain clinic. I don't want to criticize it, but I only lasted about 8 months because I really realized that even that in that setting, it wasn't enough, that I really needed to break out and go even more into the alternatives. So that's what I did. And that was quite an adventure because I had never planned it, but luckily by now I had been working on some of the stuff that I teach in the New Healing Connection. And so I was able to recognize how my intuition was guiding me. And when I had the fear of what am I doing, I could feel the fear without letting it paralyze me, and work with my intellect to be, getting the work done. So I started the clinic, and then I could really focus on whatever was coming up. So, I would try different therapies, and, if some type of meditation would come up, I would teach that with my patients. And if, I started recognizing that there'd be a theme, like a lot of patients would be feeling like a victim. And, I think when people, because I was focusing really on chronic pain, but I think everyone has a moment where they feel that sense that their life is out of control. And you feel like, what do I do? How can I change it? I don't feel like I have any way to make a difference for myself. And when I'd recognize something like that, I'd start working on that. And so I was coaching before health coaching was even a thing. I didn't know. I was doing some medicine, a lot of acupuncture, because that's what everyone wanted by the end. And then really about this, talking to people, trying to empower themselves and help them figure out how to heal themselves.
Did you have and I've got to say, for them to be teaching you acupuncture in medical school, I think that feels like it's way out there than what
Mhm.
normally is done. So you were definitely in the right place for sure.
Mhm.
Was there a specific instances or patients that really caused you to start looking where they were having major difficulties, or was it more of a collective as you're watching everything and just figuring out a new way to work with pain?
Well, Gal, I'm going to be honest. I'm not practicing. I closed my clinic a couple of years ago. And part of my practice with myself is that trying to live in present moment. So
Hmm.
I can't hardly remember what had happened last week. But if I look back, what I'd say is there were certain themes. I mean, and I'm glad I did the New Healing Connection, because I did a lot of examples of patients and situations, because I probably couldn't even remember the details now because it's sort of in the past for that aspect of it. But I do know that there were themes. You know how I think when I almost felt like I was being sort of guided with it. So like I would have like if like shame came up, and because that's another thing, when there's been this sort of movement for the last few decades where you're going to heal yourself, and you've got to have the positive thinking and the right intention. And it's there's almost a, like, if you fail and you didn't heal yourself, there's like a little bit of a shame on you for not succeeding. What's wrong? And I saw that a lot in patients, and also when you have an illness, and especially shame with pain, because people can't see it. And my
Right.
patients they just felt really inadequate, and they felt judged a lot. And so shame came up a lot. So things like that would happen, and then I'd be like, one patient after another giving me different aspects of it. And so then I put it together, be like, yeah, this is something we have to talk about. I've got to add it to my, and I wasn't thinking about it as a course then, but I had handouts, and I'd be like, this week we're talking about energy, this week we're talking about emotions. And so that's sort of how it would go, is that. And then one of the big themes in my practice was about opioids, because I didn't really do much advertising. What I did was I sent a letter to the physicians in the community, and they had already met me from working first before I went to the pain practice, but then as the short term I was doing pain medicine. And I got a lot of, that was pretty much where I got all to start. I got a lot of my referrals, and then people would self-refer. But and what would happen is, because I really advertised myself, I, instead of saying, pain clinic, I called it Schamber, that my last name Schamber Alternative Medicine, because I wanted people to know I am really looking outside of the box. And so I was really happy I did that, because I ended up getting a lot of patients who were dealing with problems with opioids.
Okay.
And whether they were addicted or whether they just had gotten on them because of pain management, because this was really at the height of physicians doing a lot of opioid prescribing. And so I think physicians in my community were starting to realize this is a problem, and what are we going to do about it? And so that ended up being sort of one of my little specialties was, oh, we don't know what to do with this patient, so let's send them to Cassandra and see what she can do about it. And I'm not an addiction specialist, but I learned enough where, when they needed to get treatment, chemical dependency treatment, I was able to help with that process. But I also tapered a lot of people. And so, yeah, it was a little bit of everything, a lot of different patients with different needs. And then it was also sort of this whole collective sort of a movement. As I look back on it, I can see that there was definitely a movement where, yeah, it was, I felt at moments I'd be like, wow, I'm so profound. I would think to myself, I'd be having like this great idea for, like, wait, this isn't me, because this is way too smart. And so I felt like it was like the more I could relax and sort of let my intellect go, because my doctor part of me, I had already learned what I needed. So the intellect was sort of comfortable, and I didn't have to, be worrying and thinking. Then my intuition could come in and help guide with that process. And that was really fun when I was doing that.
And I keep hearing, so I just keep hearing you work with a team, you use your intuition, you work with a team on the other side also, team in that non-physical. And I just keep hearing they gave you a lot of different ways to look at the same type of session. So like when you're working with shame or working with addiction, you would have lots of different patients that would come in with all different aspects of it. So you could see more of the whole picture. And they said, I'm just hearing, they said they did that because they knew you were smart enough to put all the pieces together.
Oh, thank you.
But it was, it's really interesting how when you trust your intuition, how so much more information will come in so you can take a different perspective on life in general in a lot of different areas. And for you, there's a lot of doctors you talk to, they don't really talk about intuition or using that. So you're maybe a little bit different on that aspect. And there's other ones that might, but they keep it on the down low. So your intuition, is that something where you've had your whole life, where you've really tuned into it? And when you went to medical school, did you kind of tamp your intuition down, or did you use it to your advantage?
Well, that the concept of intuition when I was young, that was just not in the collective consciousness,
Yeah.
not in my world. So, but I had no concept of it. But if I look back, yeah, I was really lucky when I was growing up, because and I think it was like more like that for kids in general. My parents sort of let me just live my life. I mean, not that I was out of control or anything, but there was a lot of freedom. We didn't have all the computer and all of the social media. So we really got time to go within and be with ourselves and get to know ourselves. And so that process, as I was getting to know myself, that was really, really natural for me. I didn't realize it was happening, but yeah, I think I was really intuitive from the time I was young. And then when I got, I mean, even in college, I remember like I'd study for in a class, and my goal was, always you got to get to medical school, so you got to get an A, and so I sort of I was college was just about getting A's for me, really. I wish I would have had a little time to enjoy some of my classes more because I was just so focused, but I could just sort of pick out like what am I going to need to study so that I can get what is going to be on the test. And so that was nice. I didn't, and so I think I was intuitive, and that was an example of that. And then when I got to medical school, I think I was just so exhausted. There were times where my intuition would come out, but I was trying to suppress it too. And I think that's part of my misery was that it was just so much work that there isn't, for me, there wasn't time to just relax and feel into that intuition. And so it was there and I used it, but it wasn't as clear as it was once I got, and even when I was working in the different healthcare systems, I felt like my intuition was there, but I just felt like I had to follow the rules too much. And so I was trying to suppress that some. And that's why it was so fun when I had my own clinic, because then it was sort of like, then the intuition became, I always say that, if I talk about the three parts of your inner self, your mind, your intellect, or your ego, and the thinking part of you. And then there's your body. And, there's a lot to that, the physical body, the energy system, but also the emotions are really physical. And then the intuition connected to that higher self or to God or source or whatever you want to call it. And, our bodies are sort of like the car getting us through life on the path of our journey through our life. And typically we let that intellect drive, and the intellect is not a very caring driver. And it can take us on like little detours over, oh, I don't want to have to deal with this pain, so I'm going to go to that McMansion, the nice neighborhood, and live where there are, the grass and the lawn is nice, and it looks like there's not going to be much misery of a nice car. But what happens is, even in that nice neighborhood that your intellect brought you to, you go behind closed doors, you could be lonely, you could be abused. There are still lessons there. Not that that's a bad thing to have those detours, but I feel like I'd rather have my intuition telling me, okay, this is the way you go. And I'm going to use my intellect to be like the GPS. Okay, how do I get there? And I'll have to feel the emotions because that's part of life, but that'll be fueling my journey. And if I can do that, then everything flows more easily. And then I sort of get the work done because, I at least I have a life where I have work I have to do, but I get that work done and I'm able to relax at the end of it a little bit more. And so that's sort of how I look at it. I was able to start doing that much more easily. And then because of the studying I was doing, once I got into my own little world, I was able to really start recognizing it more. And so that was fun.
I think that's something key. And you said something in there when you were so busy, you really had it kind of on the back burner, you had your intuition on the back burner. And I think that's very important for people to realize when you are so busy. Sometimes it doesn't come into play because you're just trying to live life, but to know it's always there. It's always there to help if you're open to it, and not to have shame if you didn't tap into it at the moment. Because I think, you were touching on shame, and that into the intuition, shame, and all the emotions, the anger and the disappointment. And to know there's so much tied to emotions. And that's something with your new healing connection. You really go into the emotions. And I love the idea when you're in that program, you're showing different facets, different examples of, like you said, patients, not of course the names or anything like that, but examples of them so people can understand. I think it helps people know I'm not the only one going through something like that. And as you started working with emotions, especially during this new healing connection, did you find I guess I'm going to go back. How did you start working with people's emotions instead of just the pain mechanism that's showing up in the clinic. How did you start working on which areas to pinpoint emotionally when you're working with someone?
Oh yeah. Well, I I think it started well because of the work I had done in my own life. I realized that there to sum it up in the beginning, I would have said I did say this. Your goal is non-judgment, so your intellect doesn't need to do too much thinking or judging or any ideal. And then you want to feel as much emotion as possible. And then you want to hear your intuition and follow it. And well, that's a pretty big order. And I realized pretty quickly I had to start fleshing that out. And so, this is the thing is that we don't really have to figure anything out. We just have to live every moment, and it's going to bring us what we need. And that's sort of what I was doing. And that's what I do in my personal life. So what would happen was, patients would come in and I had the time, and I guess you're right about this, about having time. And part of the course is talking about energy, and I talk about energy flow, and a big part of it is looking at where you're spending your energy and looking at and that's a way to slow down and take you from the physical into this inner self part of you. But you do have to have some time if you're going to be living a crazy out of control life, and sometimes we just do have to do that. But you can't, these are sort of subtle aspects of our lives that they need some nurturing, and if you don't have the time for that, it's going to be harder. And so a lot of patients that I had would come to me, and they'd be on that thought treadmill, and they'd be really busy, but they'd have this terrible pain. Or they could just be by, having been so affected for so long that they became really paralyzed with the pain, and had lost jobs and stuff. Either way. But what would happen was I always gave myself time. And this is something I learned in the pain clinics, is we always did a really thorough first initial evaluation so we could really get to know the patients. And so I continued to do that, and I would give that time for that. And it was only about 40 minutes is all that was needed. And in that 40 minutes, if you just ask people the right questions, they tell you everything about themselves that you need to know. I always say, when you're meeting people, I always listen, because the first thing they say is like the most important thing they want. They don't realize it consciously. I don't know if you've noticed this, but they tell you so many important things the first thing they tell you. And so I took that to heart. And in my the first consultation and the initial evaluation, I would get their stories, and it would just be really obvious to me what was going on. And so then I would sort of work with those aspects. So say someone is really angry.
Mhm.
And, we get taught you're not supposed to feel anger, and especially as women. Back, it's sort of switched now, but back when I first started teaching this stuff, we women were having trouble feeling our anger. Like I remember one time I was a young doctor, and I was working in urgent care, and I was trying to get a patient admitted, and I was talking to the neurosurgeon on the phone, and he didn't want to come in. And I I went, what did I do? I did what all good women did. I went to the bathroom, and I got so angry that I cried, because that's what we do. And so that's sort of how I would find people, and then I would sort of get into whatever it was, and I would sort of know, maybe it would take some time down the road, but I would be like, well, let's talk about the emotions. And then I didn't integrate that. So it would be like, that's how I found the 4 key emotions that I feel are where people spend most of their time: the anger, sadness, fear, and joy. And so learning to recognize those, feel them in your body. So for anger, when you're getting those moments where you're feeling really frustrated and your body's really angry, to let your body feel it, and to be able to be open and not hold that in and not suppress it. That's the kind of thing we would do. So I would just, it's something you just have to practice and work with, and that's sort of how that all came about.
I think that's really important for people to know, though, because a lot of times we were taught, and there's still a lot of aspects where they do that, where hold your anger in. Don't show your anger. Don't show that. Don't show your emotions. And really that's, I think, crippled us in a lot of ways and really put a lot of internal physical ailments coming on us. Is that something you've noticed where the more internalized people are there more physical ailments that are manifesting themselves?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I'm a big student of this idea of that. So your physical body has an energy component. And I like the Chinese medicine way of talking about energy flow with the meridians. I'm not, there's, when I'm doing my meditation and stuff, I'll be thinking about vibrational frequency, but I think that gets a little too intellectual and it becomes really goal oriented. And so I feel like wherever we're doing in life, we always want to try to stay as unintellectual as possible because that's so overemphasized in the world. And so I like thinking about this idea that we have this energy flowing through us. And if if you don't treat the system right, the energy will either get stagnant and blocked, or you can leak the energy out of a system. So, like in Chinese medicine, they say, if you have a physical accident, a trauma, you can have an injury to your energy field, and you can leak. So, if you hit your shoulder, if I hurt myself, I grab that part of my body just because I learned it in Chinese medicine. You grab that to sort of hold that energy injury and to patch it up. And so that's one aspect, but then there's that stagnant energy when you don't let that energy flow. And this is people like Louise Hay, Carolyn Mace. There's a book I really liked lately. Dolores Cannon's daughter, Julia Cannon, has a book about, and they all talk about sort of different ways to look at your health, at your physical problem, what physical condition you have, and what chakra, what part of your energy system is connected, and then what part of your life is connected with that. And so that's a way to sort of make that connection, that as I would play with this with patients, I was like, wow, this stuff really, it's real. This really pertains. If I would, do that, like what part of their body, or if you're having chest pain and we're looking at the fourth chakra and we're saying, well, this is the chakra where I'm going to get nurturing, where I'm going to nurture myself, where I'm going to allow that feeling of love. And then I'm looking at people with heart disease and with breast cancer, and I ask my patients, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that totally fits. You've got to nurture yourself now. A lot of those women with breast cancer are giving, and they're not nurturing themselves. So that kind of thing. I was working with that, and then I'd bring in the emotion. And so the emotion, it's basically, it's like, if you've got this, if you think about it, it's like a physical experience that you have. And emotions and thoughts are like apples and oranges. You really want to separate them, and you want to treat them like totally separate parts of you. And that's why it's good to sort of define them. So the intellect, or the thoughts, and a lot of people, if you're thinking mind body connection, I want to break that down and really be clear when I work with my patients in the New Healing Connection, is that the thoughts part, or the mind part, I look at that as being your thoughts, the intellect part of you, the words going through your mind, the words coming out of your mouth, the words that make your beliefs. The ego is another part of this. So this intellect part of you, you're going to work differently with that part of you compared to your emotions. So that's in your body. And I don't really care, where people say, is it coming from your limbic system, or where is the vagus nerve involved? In a way, that's just all intellectual, and you can go get treatments or do exercises. But we're talking on a deeper level. What do we do? How are we going to work day to day? How can I work on these parts of myself and my inner self so that I can heal myself? So emotion, this is your body feeling emotion. And it's hard to describe because it's an experience. It's not an intellectual thing. And that's the really important thing to know about emotion, is that you don't have to know what emotion you're feeling. You don't have to identify every emotion, because when you're doing that, you're in your intellect. And emotion is not intellectual. So if I'm feeling really cranky and my body's feeling that irritable physical crankiness, my job isn't to figure it out, because that is going to defeat the purpose. My job is to learn how to let it flow in a healthy way. And that really becomes the purpose. So you don't have to even make it a goal to feel emotion, because life is just every day going to give you emotion, unless you're not like me. But I think most of us, you can watch the news, you can just be in your body, you can look at the conflicts you're having with the people in your life, look at where you're not happy. And joy is part of this too. A lot of people, because they're suppressing all the other emotional flow, they can't, this is sort of an all or nothing thing. You either feel emotion or you sort of suppress it all. And so if you want to feel a lot of joy, then let all of it flow. Let your anger and your sadness and your fear flow. And then you're going to find that your joy is much more intense and much more incredible. And so that's the thing is you look at these two parts of yourself. And as you go through your day, you say, well, okay, I'm going to watch my thoughts and what are the unhealthy thoughts and work with that part. But you're going to be doing different stuff for your emotion. The emotion flow is, I'm feeling sad, so I'm going to let myself cry. And you can use, like, my old cat is coming close to death, and I probably start crying now. And so the sad part of me that wants to cry, this is the physical emotion, and I let myself cry. And I'm in public and I got to talk. So, I'm going to rein it in. But on my own time, when I need to feel, or fear, if my heart's pounding with fear, I don't say, oh, don't do that. I've got to, control myself. This isn't healthy. I say, good. Because the more fear I feel, that ends up being fuel for my life. It's what do they say? Emotions are energy in motion.
Yeah.
And that's really true. So you're taking these two parts of yourself and you're working with them in different ways in parallel at the same time. And so I can be incredibly angry and frustrated with someone or some situation, while my intellect is working on non-judgment and working on new messages and being creative with that. And there's a lot of that out in the world right now. So I think that intellect aspect of how can we change our intellectual messages, there's a lot being worked on with that. But people are having trouble with this concept that these are separate things and that we work with them totally differently, and that yes, all emotional flow is healthy, and you really don't need to suppress it. If you do suppress it, that's when, like you said, it's like you cause what I call an emotional abscess. Because what we do with emotion, and this is part of why it gets to be so messy, is that if you look at a little kid, what is the first thing we do when we're born? We feel our physical bodies, but we also feel emotion. We cry, right? When we're not happy, or when we get to the point where we're starting to be able to smile, what do? We feel. We don't start thinking for a few years. And so that's a natural, healthy thing that we were wired to do. And then what happens though is that we're tribal animals, our tribes, our family, the people around us, school, work, we get told, oh, that we're not comfortable with that emotion. And part of it is we aren't given the time and the space to learn how to work with it in a healthy way. So what happens is, instead of children being taught, yeah, you should feel your anger, you should feel your fear when something's scary and something makes you mad, but you've got to do the one rule I always say with emotions: never hurt yourself or anyone else.
No.
And so to learn how to do that, that's really the trick, is to feel it and be responsible with it. And so, but what happens is we get taught that, no, you shouldn't feel that. And instead analyze it, control it. Some people will use addictions. And I'm a sugar addict myself, a recovering sugar addict. And I know, when I'm frustrated, boy, I can eat 5 candy bars in a row. It just feels so good, right? And addictions are one thing. And then people can project and, create dramas and do unhealthy things. And then a big thing that people do, and this is what I saw with people with chronic pain, and you know what? Let's just assume, I almost just assume when anything's going on in my body, I'm going to assume that there's an aspect of what's going on with my emotions, what's going on inside of me and my inner level. So I assume that there may be some type of blocked emotion, because we put our emotions when we aren't. My cat's over here, so I'm
It's
so
all good.
just come and say hi. She just always needs to be
Love
part of
it.
things. So maybe this will relax her a little bit.
And,
So
and the animals love the energy. Anytime we're working with energy, they love to be in it.
exactly, that is true. So what happens is when we're growing up, we're like, well, oh, I have this emotion. And feeling emotions, it's like breathing. It's like your heart beating. How effective is it to say, well, I'm just not going to breathe today because it's just really not pretty and I want to put on the happy mask and look successful. It's not going to work. And so that's what emotions are like. The more you suppress that emotional flow, it's sitting there like an abscess in your body. And we have what I call the emotional basement, where every time you say, oh, I don't need to feel that thing, I don't have time for anger today, I don't have time to feel fear. And what happens is that you hold that in your energy body. I don't know if it's in your physical body, in your cells, in your energy system. I don't even really care, because it doesn't matter, because what's important is that it's sitting there festering. And so this is what'll happen is you might go through life and actually I had a friend and her cat was also dying. And this cat had been close to her, but also this cat had been with her when her parents were dying, and she hadn't let herself grieve her parents, the loss of her parents. And so what happened was we use situations because our bodies are like, oh, let me let that emotion out, I haven't grieved. And so any little situation will trigger so if you find that a little situation will just seem totally crazy, out of proportion, where your response, you're like, why am I so reactive, why am I so upset about this? Then I would just look into that and say, is there something going on? Did I stuff some emotions? So this friend of mine, when her cat was dying, it wasn't, not that she didn't love her cat, but she also realized that there are multiple levels of grief going here. And that experience with that cat, it was like opening the door to the emotional basement, where there was a room with her parents' names on the door. And this grieving over the cat also let her body open up and let some of that grief for her parents come out too. So that's how this works. It's like the system is going to do its best to be healthy, but we can override it. But then we end up really hurting ourselves, and we can really hurt others. That's the other problem.
And that's something for people to realize. Emotions, they're going to come out in one way or another. And there's so many people where we're taught to hold it down. Don't show your emotions, don't show that. And you're seeing all the physical aspects of it. Are there ways for people when they're maybe reluctant to show their emotions that they can, some maybe techniques, emotions? And I just feel like it's such a big part for people to open up to that, because honestly, maybe it's just our area of the country, but it's like a lot of people suppress those emotions. And I really loved how you said by feeling those emotions, you're going to feel more joy than you ever would have than by suppressing them. Because I think a lot of people are just looking for the joy, but still.
Well, I think you're frozen up a little. I'll just start to answer that, and you can cut back in when you come back online. Oh,
Absolutely.
okay. Yeah. The I have to laugh because in my course I had the example. I don't know if when you were young, but there was the joke that a woman would say to her husband, "Honey, what are you feeling?" And he said, "I'm hungry." And that's sort of much that exemplifies this Midwestern. You're in Wisconsin, I'm in Minnesota, and let's just say that the stuff I teach isn't being appreciated by everyone that I know. It's still, there are a lot of people that are still blocking this and are really uncomfortable with it. But so yeah, I think that's why I did the course. Let's just say, I mean, I got a ton of them. That course is like 20 hours worth of stuff. So, um,
That
but
course has a lot of information for people to move through. I think it's really helpful because it is a course you can go through a little at a time, that for people that are even processing as they're going through, I think that's a huge help for that too.
But yeah, what you can do is, because I think a big part of it, if you're in Minnesota or the Midwest, is you don't want to do it in public because you're embarrassed. And
Mm,
so I talk about that a lot, that this is the beauty of feeling emotions. This isn't something that anyone else has to ever know about, as long as you've got a little time and space to do it on your own. And in a way, I recommend that you start doing it by yourself, because it can get messy, especially anger. And so because you don't want to create a situation where you hurt other people. And you don't want to also, if you're in Minnesota, you go to work, people are going to look at you funny if you're crying too much. It's just not to be working. And so you don't want to make yourself vulnerable either. That's not the point. And so to start by feeling your emotions by yourself, and you can do everything from, ideally you want to know what all the key emotions, anger, sadness, fear, joy. So if you're going to have a goal, that's what it is. I want to know what it feels like in my body to feel anger, sadness, fear, and joy. What does that feel like? And I want to be able to let it flow when my body wants to feel it. That's a good place to start. And you can do this by yourself. Now, if you want to start with one emotion, you can, you can say, I'm going to watch a scary movie and let myself feel what it's like to feel it. Or I'm going to watch a sad movie, or I'm going to listen to, for me, some of that really heavy metal, hard music just makes me so irritable. It makes me cranky. So sit in your car and listen to, or maybe you don't like sappy love songs and they irritate you. So listen or cry to them. So you can do that. You can read books, fiction books, and don't get too intellectual. So if it's about, you're not going to be reading the history of the world unless it's a really emotional, exciting history of the world. And you're going to, now it's your goal. And actually this is sort of fun. It's like going back to being a kid when you're sort of playing. I'm going to play now, and I'm going to deliberately just make myself feel like I'm a little kid having an experience. But then you don't even have to do that, because you can just live life. I think I said this already, every day. And especially now in the world, there is just so much chaos. And it is just, it's just, every day the same thing, little different details. But and people I talk to, there are a lot of situations that people go through that are so painful, or
Yeah.
so anger provoking, or so scary. This whole thing, I've heard people say, well, we don't really need to feel fear now because it's not like cave times. But you know what? I was thinking about that. Children go to school now and have to be trained in, what is it, active shooter drill? Is that what that's called?
Yeah.
Now, when I was a kid, we did a fire alarm twice a year, and it was like fun. And that was, we didn't have that kind of thing. So just living life, but letting yourself feel what life is. You're in the grocery store. What I'm a very impatient person. That's one of my, things I'm going to be working on until the day I die is my impatience. And when I go to the grocery store, I want to just walk right through, have that line just open up, like what is it with the Moses and
Well,
the
parting the water.
yeah, I want the waters to part, and I want to walk right up to the register. And if I can't, so when I was first doing that years ago, I was practicing this, and I just sit in line and I just sort of stew under my breath. And I would, I'm not going to involve other people. If you can't do that, go to your car and just wait until you get to your car, and then just feel your anger. But that kind of thing. Let yourself process it. Let yourself have your tantrum by yourself, like be it like that little child. Let your body decompress and let some emotion out. And the funny thing is that what you'll find is, yeah, and you probably know this, if I will be with someone and they will be so irritated about something and they are so upset about it, and I'm like, wow, I don't feel anything about that. And it could go vice versa. And because life is, the world is a mirror for us, and whatever is in the world that is upsetting us or getting our attention or making us get on the thought treadmill and judge and think, all of that stuff is, it's showing us what's inside of ourselves. And so what you find is what upsets you in the world outside of you is just something that you need to work on inside of yourself. And if you've done a lot of work with your intellect and you've worked on non-judgment, you meditate, and you feel like you sort of have your mind together, but you're still being driven crazy by the news or by this person in your life that you just can't stand, and they always drive you crazy. And every time you see them, you're determined this time it's going to be different, but by the end of the visit, you're going to just want to just well, you'll probably find that if you start doing this work with emotions and go off by yourself and let the emotion flow, this is the way, and this is what I found for my own life. This is the way you finally put those dramas. And I've got a module about dramas in the course, but this is how you put the dramas to sleep and the conflicts, so that you don't have to keep having that same conflict, and you can finally come to peace. And it might not be that you're going to spend a lot of time with that person, and maybe your intuition, and that's the other thing, is as you work with your thoughts and your emotions, that's where you do your work. But with the intuition, there is no work, because intuition is just about allowing that expert, your own personal expert that always knows what's best for you and everyone and everything in the situation. So you're doing this work and you're feeling your emotions, and then all of a sudden your intuition is like, wow, you know what? We need to make this change. And maybe it is that you're going to leave a situation. Like I had to leave a job and a couple jobs, and I had to make changes. And by doing the work with your intellect, and then also by letting your emotions flow, that's how you hear your intuition. So if you're having trouble accessing that and you feel like, oh, I don't know what to do next, use the drama to do the work, clear your emotional basement, so you're not putting your energy into that situation. You'll have the energy then when your intuition, and the thing about that intuition too is sometimes it's a loud voice, but you know what I'm talking about. It's pretty darn subtle most of the
Very
time,
subtle. Yes.
because yeah, and it's not intellectual. So if you feel like you've got to explain to yourself why you're doing something, that's not intuition, because it doesn't need to explain it. That's your intellect. And it doesn't feel either. It's not afraid, it's not angry, and it's not even really super joyful, because I'll tell you, eating all my sugar gives me a lot of joy, but my intuition isn't really on board with that. So intuition is more of just that sort of this message. It's like, I'm here. Some people will see, a vision. Some people will hear a voice. I sort of feel it in my gut. You might get goosebumps. You might wake up, if you're really blocking during the day, you might have to wake up at night from a dream where your intuition was talking in your dream. And so that you need to have some time to be able to hear or work with yourself to hear it. But then as you quiet your mind and you let your body decompress, then you can really hear that intuition, and it's going to guide you. So in the end, it might not, so I'm not saying, oh yeah, feel your anger because this person's really annoying and just stay there in that relationship for the next decade. No, do the work with the drama and do what it's teaching you about yourself. And then you'll have the moment where your intuition's like, yep, this is it. This is however it's supposed to do change. Maybe you'll just resolve the issue and that'll be the end of it, and you're at peace with this person. Or maybe you say, well, I'll bless you, but I've got to move on, however it's going to work. And so what happens then, and it's like, well, how do I heal my body? It ends up that this is the work that heals your body. On one level, you can stop your addictions. I don't have to eat 5 candy bars. I would still like to, but I can also control myself.
Right.
And I don't have to hold the physical tension in my body. Oh my goodness, this is where I really appreciated this, was with people with chronic pain, and how much they you talk about turning emotions on yourself, how much they tighten up they clench their jaws, and then they get their headaches. They tighten their necks and their backs. They tighten their I don't even know how to tighten my chest muscles. They tighten their pinky toe muscles and get toe pain. I'm not kidding. That happened. And so it's like, that is such an obvious way. When you don't have, your body's like, oh, thank you for it might, if you're having a really big crying jag, you might get a headache. Or as you're learning to feel anger, you might be tightening up and you've got to sort of learn, how do I feel anger and loosen my body? So it's not that simple. But it's in the course. I mean, I don't want to be selling the course, but I've told these stories so much that it's like, it's like all these details are important. And I don't want to gloss over them, because I know this stuff is really, and I've worked with all these people, and that's where I've come to understand it. So yes, this is important. You need to be able to figure out, how do I loosen up my body while I feel this emotion? And then when you do it, and it takes some energy and takes some time to figure that out, but then your body relaxes, like, oh, it's just like a big sigh. And so that's how one of the aspects, and even the neurons, our neurons, pain, every aspect of pain, there are always going to be neurons of your nerves, the neurons, the cells involved, because they're the ones that transmit pain. So I don't care if it's muscle pain or nerve pain or whatever kind of pain it is, the nerves are involved. And we all know about the sympathetic nervous system. There's a lot being discussed now in the new age healing community, the energy healing community, about how we need to, people are looking at the sympathetic nervous system and the whole, the brain and the limbic system and the vagus nerve and all that. And really, this is, if you're having trouble getting to the root of the problem, you want your nerves to finally be able to relax, then you do this work where you just let yourself feel. And you get to that point where you're getting more like a child again. Because kids, if you look at them, what do? They're really, like, if they're scared, they're like, oh my goodness, I'm scared. And they're scared for a while. And then, they take care of it as much as they can. And then if the situation is a healthy one, then they let it go and they move on. That's what the cave people did. They sat in the cave and then they go out and fight the bear. And then the sympathetic nervous system would kick in, and then they come back home to the cave after they're done, and they'd be able to relax, and the parasympathetics would kick in and they'd start to rest and digest. And so it's like, we need to be able to honor our body. This is really about honoring your body.
And
That's
I
what
think
emotion
I think
is.
I think that's something really important, because so many people, you're out there, you're doing everything. You're in, a lot of times with the society we're in now, you're in almost constant stress all the time. And it's learning to recognize it, learning to recognize the triggers for you, and changing how you're handling those triggers, changing what you're doing to them. And then you also mentioned about being in the present moment, and that's something you've been working on. So how, because there's so many people I've talked to, and I know you've talked to, where how do you let that go? How do you move beyond that? How do you let go of everything in your past? But for you, what are some methods you've done to be in the present moment, and how has it helped you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have to laugh because this goes back to 25 years ago, when I was trying to figure out, after residency, how do I relax? Because I was in that state. I was really hypervigilant, really intense, having trouble relaxing and sleeping. And so I was trying all these types of meditation, and nothing worked. And I hated it, just hated every minute of it. And it just was so difficult. And I sort of gave up. I was like, well, I guess I'm going to just put that aside. I guess I'll never meditate and I'll never be at peace. And so I sort of just sat, and part of this was intuitive, because I joke, my superpower is feeling emotions. So I've always been emotional. I might have tried to suppress it, but I've always had to let myself feel it. And so I'd have well, that they can meditate, I guess I can't. I'd be grumbling to myself and feeling some anger and about why I can't meditate. Why can't I see auras and everyone else can see auras? And but what happened was, the process of this, and I'll have to say, about 20 years ago, I had a psychic reading. It was really helpful, because it sort of really honed in on this mind, body, spirit, and the differences of these, and gave me some hints. And I was like, oh, wow, yeah, okay, I can work with this. So it sort of gave me a little bit of an infrastructure. I had been working with this stuff, but I didn't really realize it. And so that really helped me start putting this together. So in my own life, I practiced what I preach. I worked on finding healthy new messages. And a lot of that comes, I find when we're suffering, it's a lot of it, the intellect, spirit is really our spiritual experience. That's really not, that's not the thinking intellect part isn't so much the spirit is that it's like emotions, you feel it, you know what I
Right.
mean.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
experiential. And your intellect has to get out of the way for all the magic in life, I think. And so, but one thing that my intellect needed, it was some new messages. And I find that so often with suffering, I always go to that idea that I'm connected to everyone and everything, and we're all connected. And maybe down here in this dimension, we don't realize it, but on the other side, we're all working together, cheering ourselves on as we play out the dramas of life. And
Absolutely.
that would, huh?
I said, absolutely. There's definitely so much support on the other side, but a lot of times we don't realize it's there, and it's being able to tap into it. And you, with your intuition, have definitely tapped into a lot of that and bringing their knowledge, their understanding, bringing it here for so many people to help so many people as they work through their emotions and their pain, physical and internal pain, to move through that. That's so important for people to realize.
Mhm.
So, yeah, thank you for tapping into your emotions, your
Well,
intuition.
and I'm glad, I'm selfish, and I don't even care about anyone else because it made me feel so good. that, but that's what I did. I would find new messages, and sometimes you have to be creative and look for other people and help. And then I felt and I'm not talking if you're going to really embrace emotions, I've gone through months at a time where I cry every day, or months at a time where I wake up every night and feel fear for a couple hours every night. And or I'm cranky when I stopped eating sugar, and well, I didn't stop, but I reined it in. I was cranky every day for at least 6 months. And I allow myself to do that. And so it hasn't been a quick, easy road. And I think that's a really important point, is that healing is not, there are miraculous moments, and that's wonderful. And I sure wish that would happen to me. But in my life, the real healing takes time. And so I didn't have a plan to live in present moment. I mean, I knew that would be fun, but I didn't expect it for myself. But as I did clean my emotional basement, you'd say, and as I did my work with my intellect and help it relax. And by the way, just by feeling your emotions, if you're having trouble getting off what I call the thought treadmill, where you can't stop thinking, and that
Mhm.
is the quick fix, is get into emotion, because you can't think very hard when you're having your tantrum or your pity party. And it sort of naturally calms the intellect. And first the intellect fights, but it's like, no, I want to be in control. But then it's like, wait, I can relax. And this is a process, because most of us have been doing this for decades. And so it's great if young kids, I always tell my patients with young kids, it's like, oh, teach them now, teach them, let them feel the emotions, let them do it healthily. And then they don't have to go through all this backtracking we have to do. But anyway, and so what I found is then I'd start hearing my intuition, but also the process of just doing these things. Then I've started meditating. And now I do I guess you call it self hypnosis, because I learned how to do it for other people. But it's like now I'm to the point where I go around during the day, and I get a little embarrassed with my friends because I'm so in the moment. I can't, I'll like, what were we talking about last week? It's like, and I'm still in a little process now where I'm a lot, I feel like I'm more in my intuition and more in my present moment, but my intellect still wants to fight. So when I'll be like, you go in the other room, and you get there, and you're like, what was I looking for? And I'm like, okay, now see what that is that's if my intellect hadn't jumped in and tried to control, I would have, my intuition would have brought that up for me. But I still have this process. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where I'm
Yeah.
still, my intellect is still a little bit of a bully, still wants to get in, but I'm
Oh,
working with it. But
absolutely. And I think that's something for people to know. It's like a lot of times you'll do something and you'll know inside it's like, oh, I should have listened to myself. I had a thought, I had a feeling, I should have known, but I did it anyhow. And it's really not taking yourself to task for it, but just go, oh yeah, next time I'll try to listen a little bit closer.
yeah,
So
yeah.
absolutely, it happens a lot. And when you talked about meditation, it's also, so many people like, oh, you need to meditate for an hour or 2 hours or whatever. And you're doing all this, you have to meditate. Like you said, I'm not meditating. What's wrong with me type of thing. And honestly, I have a difficult time doing the traditional meditation. So I do it my way. So what can you recommend for people as for meditation? Is that for everyone? Is there ways to do it? Is there something that's not so um yeah, I almost
Oh
hear the
yeah.
word where we
Well,
condemn ourselves for it.
I think there are two types. If you want to do the meditation, I think that most people are teaching. It's really it's the intellect working with itself. So there's that kind where I'm going to observe myself. Well, there's your intellect again, right? Or I'm not going to think, which is like, a sugar addict working in a candy store telling me not to eat candy while I'm looking at it all day, right? It's for me, it was really hard to do that. But
Absolutely.
some people it really works well for. So you can do those types of more of the traditional meditation techniques, and if they work for you, great. But if you're like me and it just because my intellect, being especially I think being a doctor, you really have to develop your intellect. When I got out of my training, my intellect was the boss, that I wasn't going to be able to trick it out of being really intense. It just was so, it felt like it had to control everything. So what I recommend, if you don't like meditating and you have trouble with meditating, is then go through the back door, and instead of working on a process to meditate, then focus on the emotions. So your meditation might be, I'm going to listen to a book on tape and just quietly listen to that and see what I feel in my body. Or maybe your meditation is walking, or it's movement, or it's in the pool, or it's something where you have, for me in the beginning, I think now I think back on it, I think it was more gentle movement where I'd have different stimulations so that my intellect could be a little bit diverted. And that was another way to get into my emotions. And then, oh, I just love watching television. So I just, I can watch just crappy TV shows and just zone out and relax. And so I think of meditation as whatever's really fun and relaxing. And, that idea of going back to your childhood and whatever's fun for you to do, if you like to paint or you like to color or whatever you like to experience in life, that's going to, I think that the thing is, it's that mind body connection again. How can you get back and because it's like a balance. You've got your intellect, your mind here, your body over here, and your emotions here. How are you going to, most people, the intellect has all I guess as the intellect is all the weight, the emotions are just dangling in the air. The body, the recognition and connection to our body is just dangling. How can you bring these two parts of you into balance? Anything you can do to stimulate your physical, stimulate the body, to stimulate emotional flow. And so meditation should just be fun. It should, think of it as what would be at you as a child, what would have made you happy. And some days I'm having a bad day, so my meditation is going to be, I'm going to sit by myself for a half an hour and just huff and puff. And it's about just sensing, because the more you do that, I found for myself is, and this wasn't, I didn't ever expect to, if you would have asked me 20 years ago Are you ever going to enjoy meditating and enjoy sitting quietly? I can sit quietly for 2 hours now by myself and totally enjoy it and just totally be relaxed. And it's the most pleasant thing. And I do it regularly. And
Oh,
I mean, seriously, that is one of the big shocks in my life is that I can do that. But because my intellect had to realize that, wow, I can relax and there's more going on. And then your inner world starts to get more interesting. And because you're hearing your intuition and you're accessing those inner parts of yourself. And you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of fun in that.
oh,
But
absolutely.
but yeah, if you feel like you're forcing, then yeah, nothing that's forced is fun. It's just not going to last, or it's going to be so painful. It's not going to be worth it.
I think that's so important for people to realize, not to look at meditation in the traditional sense, and instead look at it as what's fun, what do I enjoy doing? If it's coloring, if it's doing, painting or anything like that, or like you said, watching a show, if that show relaxes you and just lets you forget about everything else, that's your meditation. And for people to get out of the traditional connotation of meditation and then let it grow from there. Like you said, have fun with it. If you're walking into a meditation going, oh God, you're grumbling, like, oh, I got to get other stuff done. I'm just going to be wasting my time. I shouldn't be here. It's not going to be a good one.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Uh-huh. And because I learned hypnosis, there, we've got these different brain wave states. You've got awake is beta, and then a relaxed, sort of mild hypnotic state. And I consider that like a meditative state as alpha. Now, that alpha is when you're watching television and you're into the television show and you sort of forget everyone else and everything around you. Or, you go for a drive and, 20 miles went by and you don't remember what happened. So really doing that kind of activity is a meditation, and it might be the dumbest show. I really, have enjoyed some really stupid TV shows over my life. But actually, that if I can get into that alpha state, then that's a alpha brainwave state, then that's accomplishing something really important. And so you can actually, if your intellect is saying, wait, so this is an example of new message. My intellect is saying, wait, I can't be watching that TV and your body is begging you. It's like, oh, I'm so exhausted. I just want to sit here. And you're feeling the intensity in your body. You might be getting some pain and you're feeling tightness, but your intellect's driving the car. It says, we got to keep going. I've got all these things. And you say, well, wait, you know what? It's healthy. I'm going to accomplish more later if I can give myself time to slow down. Let me do my meditation and watch that dumb TV show that's on right now. And that's the kind of thing where you're doing the intellect work, new messages that are healthy, regenerative. You're letting your body be the equal partner to your mind. And that process is it's magic. And it's so simple. But this, when I was working with my patients with chronic pain, this is the stuff that would really get to the root of their problem. And the amazing, yeah, you can get the quick fix with the medicine, and you can get the quick fix with the acupuncture and those and your energy work, and all that stuff is great. But I want to get to the root of the problem. And I don't want to need all of that stuff. It's fine if you enjoy it, but I want to be able to have a healthy system that's in balance, and it's living the healthiest life it can be. And that's the way you find that place of peace, and where your body can feel, where then your intuition comes in and it might say, hey, but wait, we got to try this different thing for the healing. And then it takes you on another path.
I think that's so important for people to realize. This is a path. It's doing steps at a time. It's being in touch with who you are, being open to changing how you're doing things. And really, if you're looking at if you've been running in pain, in exhaustion, and all of that for so long, there's a change needed. And this is definitely a change in the right direction. And I've got to say, I mean, you've worked with thousands of people, and throughout that time, you've gained an extreme knowledge base of information that now you're sharing with others so people can see there's a lot of other people that have gone through very similar aspects. And I think that's something so key with your new healing connection for people. For them, they can go in, do it on their own time, do it on their own time frame, but do it. There's a lot of people that are afraid to show their emotions and afraid to do things, even to talk to someone personally versus working through the information on their own. So I think that's something so important for people to have that opportunity to do it that way. So I'm extremely happy to have you on today because it's so good to have this information and to share that information with others. And you've gone through, your own working through your meditation, finding ways to meditate and do things. And I like the idea where you talked about walking meditations, to just walk and enjoy what's around you and not come to task because this isn't really meditation. I I'm going to say I love the idea that you have been breaking the boxes, breaking those barriers about what's expected of people and helping people in so many ways. And that's something, emotions, for people to recognize how important they are. That's huge. It was so huge. And especially, like you said, in our area, especially not as familiar with other areas if they hold it in as much, but here a lot
Well,
of them just
actually, I think I sort of studied this because that came up at one point, and I think what happens is this is it's a problem all over the world as far as I see. And what happens for a lot of people is there are the cultures where they seem really, emotional, and you think, oh, they're really feeling the emotion,
yeah,
but it also can become a problem with projection. And so that, now we're seeing in the world all of these wars and all of this chaos. And when you look at that, a lot of that is that projected anger and fear. And so I think, yeah, maybe we hold it in more, but in a way I'd rather hold it in than project it out and create the stuff that's getting
chaos.
created. And so no, I just from what my experience has been, and what another thing is, a lot of people will do one emotion well and they can let that out, but then they suppress the other ones. And so it ends up being like, remember John Wayne and Clint Eastwood in the olden days, and they're like, I'm tough. Because I always laugh, when they're angry, they feel anger. When they're sad, they feel anger. When they're happy, they feel anger.
Anger.
And so whereas women, we were like, when I'm sad, I cry. When I'm angry, I cry. When I'm happy, I cry. So yeah, I do feel like this is a worldwide issue. And yeah, some areas they do let things flow, but then a big part of this too is about the safety way, a safe way of doing it
Yeah,
without, and that's where the dramas come in, without blaming other people for your fear and or the other emotions, and being able to look at yourself and say, well, where are they showing me that in myself, and what do I need to do for myself to heal my body, and then also to heal my life. And so that's an ideal when we can all, my fantasy world is that we'll all be doing feeling our own emotions, letting that flow, working on our non-judgment, and being much more intuitive. And sure, I'm sure we'll still have medical conditions that we're going to need
right.
doctors and healthcare providers for, and we're still going to want to have people who are doing all the different things that are being done in the world. But if we could all just take care of our own selves a little bit more, a lot more, it would just make the world so much easier and so much more peaceful. So that, yeah, that would be ideal as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And it's to wish everyone could really get in touch with themselves more and not take it on, not take on everything around them, be able to express themselves, like you said, without causing harm or danger to anyone else. That's obviously not what we want, but it is a culmination of bringing all of the modalities together. There's absolutely needed the parts with the medical aspects. You absolutely need them. There's absolutely great areas to use the holistic approaches and to bring and meld both of those worlds together. I think that's what's so important for with having you on here is showing you can meld both of those worlds together. And what a beautiful melding it can be in helping so many more people. Because honestly, there's a lot of people with chronic pains and things that they really can't pinpoint where it's coming from. But my guess is some of that is a lot of it coming from emotional aspects also.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Cassandra, for being on here. And is there anything else you'd like to say before we close the interview?
I don't know. I think I said a lot.
You did awesome. You shared so much great information for people. And I think for people, I honestly think have to go through and listen to this a couple of times to pick up so much of what you had said. So definitely amazing, amazing.
Well,
And
thanks so much for having me. It's been really fun talking to you, and I like listening to your podcast. And I love the way you have your guides helping you.
oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's always so much fun. They love to join. They love to join. So thank you so much, Cassandra. And I just want to encourage everybody to make sure to go out there and check out it's drcassandra.com or the newhealingconnection.com. And also she's on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I will have those links down below. So if you're listening, can't write them fast enough, no worries. Go on down below and check out the links and you'll have them there. And thank you so much, Cassandra, for everything you've done. And thanks for I like the fact so some of the reason you're here is you listen to some of my other podcasts and approach me, and I am so happy you did. So
Mm,
thank you so much for that. I
yeah.
appreciate it. And definitely, so for those of you out there, make sure to check her out and make sure to check out her new healing connection for people because there is so much information in there. It's definitely going to be worth your while. And with that, I just want to say thank you again, Sam, so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge and who you are. And I also want to encourage everybody, watch the next episodes of Edge Talk Radio on the first and third Tuesdays of the month at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you've missed any past episode, no worries. You can listen to the downloadable podcast on pretty much all of the downloadable podcast areas, or you can watch the interview on Angela Zabel, Teacher Coach Medium on YouTube. So thank you all for listening, amplifying our universe together. Thank you so much and have an absolutely amazing day.